giving God the praise. Only God is worthy to be praised. Let's give another big hand for the UAW Region 1A Unity Choir. God is great and greatly to be praised. Now, every house has to have a leader. And the leader of this house, without question, the very Reverend Wendell Anthony, Pastor, Fellowship Chapel, President, Detroit NAACP, Freedom Fighter, Revolutionary Extraordinaire. Please receive our pastor, Reverend Wendell Anthony, and our host.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let me say, Watson, let me say good evening to everybody. And let me say that there are a number of seats that are over to my right and your left. You don't have to stand there. If you have a seat next to you, please raise your hand. We want people to come in and sit down. Please come in and sit down. And as we want to show Professor Davis some love, show each other some love by moving over a little taste so folk can sit down. There's plenty of seats in various areas. If you have some room next to you, please raise your hand. We don't want anybody standing in the aisles other than an usher. There's some seats over to my right and your left, and some seats over to my left and your right. We are very pleased to welcome all of you here tonight, and this is a tremendous expression of Detroit's love for social activism and historical correctness, and we're just very pleased to have you here tonight. For some of us ain't been together since the last time Angela Davis was here, amen. And that was in 1994. She's been to the Detroit metropolitan area, but a lot of folks say they've been to Detroit in the metropolitan area, but you got to be between 8 Mile and the river in order to be in Detroit. Can I get a witness here? So we are just glad that our sister stopped on this way. Last time she was here, she had a big fro. Her hair was a little blacker, and so was yours, as a matter of fact. But it was great, and I have to say I'm very pleased because the last time she was here, she was at the old Fellowship Chapel over on West McNichols and near Evergreen. And that was at the time when we had just had the National Political Black Leadership meeting down at the Renaissance Center in Detroit. We brought various groups together, nationalists, Pan-Africanists, Christians, Muslims, theologians, all kind of folk, academicians, and some folk who didn't know what they was. They was just at the gathering. And we talked about how we could work together in spite of our differences, some unity without uniformity. And that night we had a big rally at Fellowship Chapel. And Joanne Watson and myself, along with then Executive Director for the National NAACP, Ben Chavis, put that meeting together. Folk who were shooting at each other, congressmen, started talking to each other. And we all took a pledge that we would work together that night. And that pledge was given at the church. Angela Davis was there. She stood up and she said, because of what y'all did here tonight and what I see, I'm going to join the NAACP. And she signed her membership card up to join the NAACP. And I got the picture on my wall with her signing up for the NAACP. And if your membership has expired, I got another card for you tonight. So we're just glad to have you here. We are just so excited. This is a great time in our city. It's a great time and a critical time in our nation's history. And I know that we just want to hear the critique and the paradigm by which she now speaks to us, because many of us grew up with Angela Davis, and we were inspired by her and her work and her commitment. And God has been kind to her, and she still has that academic thrust, and she still looks good. Amen. After all of these years, she's been good. And to show the change, you know, things have changed since then. Years ago when we had that, I didn't have this, and now we got a 15-month-old baby. Show the 15-month-old baby. She come to get tonight some Angela Davis-ism. Amen. That's Wendelea. She here to hear from you, Angela. Yeah, that's our baby right there. I'm still good. Amen. Amen. So we just want to acknowledge that. We're excited. I want to thank the Detroit committee on behalf of Fellowship Chapel. We're glad to have you here. Finally, as I take my seat, and I apologize, I have to leave early tonight. I really want to be here to hear all of this, but I can't. But I want to say this. You are in a place that used to be all demise and destruction. There were abandoned houses where you now sit. There were torn up cars where you now sit. There was tall grass and high weeds where many of you now sit, where you parked your cars. There was drug paraphernalia where you're sitting when your cars are. Where this pulpit sits used to be a dope house. Now it's a hope house right here in the city of Detroit. And I just want to say that out of the crucible of our condition emerges a victorious people. And that's the message that Angela Davis has been given. And that's why Detroit, let's stand up and give her a Detroit welcome. None other than the icon, the historic measure of a treasure, the Honorable Professor Angela Davis. God bless you, and we thank you. Amen.
Giving God the praise. Only God is worthy to be praised. Praise his holy name. What an honor it is to be in the house with Angela Davis, Professor Angela Yvonne Davis. My. I'm going to be bringing up the Dean of the Congressional Black Caucus. Before I do that, I have some official. Oh, here comes the baby. Come on now. On behalf of the city of Detroit, I'm Joanne Watson, and on behalf of the city of Detroit, and I have a wonderful colleague sitting right on that front row, the Honorable Brenda Jones. Stand up, Brenda Jones. My. On behalf of all 9 council members, we present this testimonial resolution to honor the Honorable Angela Yvonne Davis, Madam Professor. She is our warrior sister, our revolutionary sister. She's the queen mother of the movement, huh? Come on, somebody. She's a bad sister, a luminary, an author, a professor, a leader. And it's not over yet. But we don't want to miss an opportunity to say, you are special to Detroit. We welcome you to Detroit. We love you in Detroit, and we herewith present this testimonial to Angela Davis tonight. You don't really need to introduce the Honorable John Conyers, Jr. There's only one man ever endorsed by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Only one man introduced the King Federal Holiday Bill. Only one man. Charles Speaker. Only one man hired Rosa Parks. And she lived in Detroit more years than she lived in Montgomery, Alabama. There's only one John Conyers, and here he is to bring greetings.
Love you. Brothers and sisters, this is a night that we not only remember history, but that we plan on how we're going to make history. Because This great leader of ours, Angela Davis, professor, activist, author, teacher, has come at this particular point in time 13 days before the elections of the United States of America that start at the top of the ticket with the incumbent president, Barack Obama, the 47th president of the United States. So to me, as well as being reminded of the wonderful relationship that I've had with this great leader, it also advises us as to how much more we may be able to do in these next 13 days. Because the history, we make the history. We don't just read about history, we're making it. African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Pacific citizens, and people are watching us all over the world. And that's why I'm so glad, aren't you, that you're at Fellowship Chapel once more. You see, Dr. Wendell Anthony was leading when this was a small church and when he wasn't the head of the NAACP, the largest chapter in the United States. But what I'm more interested in than anything else is what we're going to take home with us tonight that we didn't have when we came in here this evening. Are you going to get something? Are you going to be moved by something? Are you going to resolve something? And so, Dr. Angela Davis, I'm so happy that you're here. You're right on time. Couldn't be a better night, couldn't be a better place, couldn't be a better group of people like ourselves to be here. And so I add, on behalf of the members, the progressive members of Congress, which includes not just the Congressional Black Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus, but it includes some 70-some-odd members of the House of Representatives that are in the Progressive Caucus. It's in their behalf that I add my humble welcome to you here. We love you, Angela Davis.
Why are we here tonight? It's been 40 years. And those of you who are scholars of faith, you know there's something significant about the year 40, huh? It's been 40 years since the acquittal of Angela Davis. How many of you out there ever wore a Free Angela button? If you wore a Free Angela button, just raise your hand. Come on now. How many of you out there ever marched for peace and justice and freedom now? How many carried a band, raised some funds, rode a bus on behalf of your people, on behalf of the struggle? This evening is for you. We also intentionally, with a wonderful committee, planned this evening so that it would be just before the national election, because this is a critical election. We wanted somebody who could light a fire, ignite like dynamite, the voting fever in this community. So we have some dynamite lighters here tonight. One of them is Chris Mikalakis, President, AFL-CIO. Come on, Chris. My. Bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Watson. Sisters and brothers, good evening. I'm honored to speak before you today, and I especially want to thank Professor Davis for joining us. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. And I also want to thank all the organizations that sponsored this event. They're too numerous to list, but I especially want to thank Reverend Wendell Anthony for offering his sanctuary for this event. Thank you so much, Reverend. I also want to acknowledge our President Emeritus, Sandra Williams. She's been a great friend and a mentor. So, every election, we always hear two things. First, this is the most important election of our lives. The next thing we hear is, no, seriously, this time it really is the most important election of our lives. Well, I'm here to tell you, seriously, this time it really is the most important election of our lives. And the reason for it is there's so much at stake this year. This isn't just about who's going to occupy which office, who are we going to elect for president, or who's going to be our representatives in Congress. What's at stake during this election is the fundamental institution of democracy. We have Proposal 1, which a no vote would overturn one of the most dangerous and blatantly autocratic laws in our nation's history. As you all know, our local dictator law, which the Republicans call the emergency manager law, strips citizens from the right to have a locally elected government. What this law does is it gives big returns to banks who made these risky loans through municipal float bonds, and it gives them money off of the backs of workers who've invested years and years of public service. This law means selling public assets with no input from the public. It means the erosion of our checks and balances, all in the name of serving corporate special interests who value profit over the well-being of citizens in our cities. This reactionary, anarchistic, right-wing assault on our democracy does not end there, however. In addition to silencing democracy in our municipalities, we've even seen the Republicans attack our right to a democracy at the workplace. Politicians in Lansing, under the influence of these shady corporate interests, have passed dozens, hundreds of laws that restrict our right to have a democracy at the workplace. Laws that interfere with labor and management, as if these Tea Party extremists knows what's best for us. We all know about the importance of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining gives working families a voice to negotiate for fair wages, benefits, and working conditions that are good for all of us. Collective bargaining gives firefighters and police officers a voice to negotiate for life-saving equipment. Collective bargaining protects nurses so they can speak up about patients' care without fear of being fired. Collective bargaining helps teachers fight for smaller class sizes to better educate our children. And you know, it's because of collective bargaining I was able to grow up with a roof over my head, with clothes on my back, with health care when I was sick. It's why I was able to graduate from college debt-free, all because my father was a union member. And even those that are not in unions can enjoy the benefit of good wages, benefits, and safe workplaces. Why, my grandparents made a living off of selling groceries and food items from the old country to steel workers who worked in the steel mills in River Rouge. And while my grandfather was a member of that one big union, but that's another story for another day, he didn't have a collective bargaining agreement, but he benefited from those that did. And so we see collective bargaining playing such an important role in our communities and protecting all of us here in Michigan and all of us in the United States. Collective bargaining is why our seniors and our loved ones can enjoy retirement with dignity. And on the topic of our seniors, let me talk very quickly about Proposal 4. In addition to guaranteeing collective bargaining for home care workers, Prop 4 ensures that our loved ones have the safe care that they need to live with dignity by creating a home care registry and by providing training for all of our home care workers. So today, I don't just want to talk to you about opposing the emergency manager law or supporting collective bargaining with Prop 2 or supporting the creation of a home care registry. I want to talk about the bigger picture of what we are up against this election. Our political enemies have pushed laws limiting our democracy at City Hall and in our schools. Our enemies have passed countless laws taking away our right to a voice, to a democracy at the workplace. But our enemies don't stop there. Today, in Ottawa County, Ohio, a mailer was sent out with intentionally misleading information about the date and location of the election in order to deter certain people from voting. In Florida, official-looking mailings, even with the Secretary of State's name and badge on it, have gone out wrongfully questioning the eligibility of certain voters. Misleading billboards have gone up in other swing states, wrongfully claiming that certain types of people are ineligible to vote. And in Detroit, here, it shames me that year after year, we have to plan for right-wing interference at our polling locations. So in closing, this is not an election strictly about who's going to live in the White House. This is an election about the future of our democracy, our opportunity to send a powerful message to those who work tirelessly to silence our voice. Get out and vote. Thank you.
The Honorable Claudia House Morcom is going to introduce our keynote speaker. And Claudia House Morcom is not just another judge. She's not just another attorney. She's not just another activist. She's magnificent. She's a leader in her own right. She was one of the people who was at council 40 years ago when we won the acquittal of Angela Davis, the Honorable Claudia House Morcom. She's one of the co-founders of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. She's working right now to free the Cuban Five. She is a leader among leaders and is going to introduce our speaker at this time. Please welcome and receive our own, the one, the only, legendary, the Honorable Claudia House Morcom.
Whoa, thank you. I'm not even running for office. Thank you. I am so excited, and mostly because I'm going to introduce Angela, but because of this wonderful turnout that we have, and I want to thank everybody for coming. I see young people, I see new friends, I see friends of long standing. See, I don't say old friends anymore. I'm too old myself. But this has been just a wonderful showing of what Detroit means and what Detroit thinks, not just of Angela, but for what she stands for. I didn't know who Angela Davis was back in the 60s. I was a new young lawyer trying to make a living, find a job, and had finally gone down to Mississippi. And I want to say this, while I was in Mississippi, I met one of her future attorneys for her trial, Margaret Burnham, had been down there with SNCC, and she was one of a host of young people that had been arrested by the Mississippi authorities and was in the jail. And I went to the jail on my first day in Mississippi with Carsey Hall, who was one of the only 3 black lawyers in Mississippi to talk to the young people who were there. And I think they were in the fairgrounds because so many of them were there, and Margaret was there. And years later, I found out, who she was, and she became such an activist on behalf of Angela and also a judge later, but stopped as a judge so that she could work in the kinds of community events that were going on as an activist. Also, I met Howard Moore, who became one of Angela's attorneys for her trial, and also Leo Branton I had known by reputation for a long, long time. And as many of you know, I think Angela was serving also as her own counsel in the trial that they had in San Jose, and she gave the opening statement. Now, Angela is a person that has always been an activist. She's an academician. She is an educated person. She has long been in academia. The President of the United States got her fired, and at that time, that was Ronald Reagan, from her position in the school in California because she was a communist. And one of the things that happened when Angela was arrested on these trumped-up charges and put in jail, I was asked by some people here in Detroit who knew Angela, Tommy Dennis, Wendell Addington, if I would lend my name to her to support her in trying to get the word out about her and the kind of person she was. And they told me so many things about Angela, I couldn't say no. And those of you who are going into the reception later, there's a picture of Angela, Wendell Addington, who was the young man that asked me to work on the committee, Senator Jackie Vaughn. Do any of you remember Jackie? Yeah. And myself, and it's 40 years old. It was taken out at the fairgrounds after Angela was acquitted on her case. And Angela has her afro, but I have an afro. I had never worn an afro in my life, so you can see me in my first and only afro. It was quite a thing. But Jackie Vaughn and I were the chair people of the Free Angela Davis Committee for the state of Michigan and especially Detroit. We worked so hard to get her case out and to get people to know about her and to demonstrate and to be prideful for what she had accomplished and also to work for her defense and to raise money for her attorneys. And everybody came out. It was fantastic. We brought her mother here, Sally Davis, to talk about Angela in the early years and how she had been committed as a young person, even when the friends of hers at the Birmingham church, which was bombed, were killed. 4 young women that Angela and her sister Fania were very, very close to. We brought Reverend Ben Chavis here. This was when the Wilmington 10 had been charged with trumped-up charges also and worked on his behalf, but he also helped us raise money for Angela. Then when Angela won her trial, it was a phenomenal thing. But Detroit came out and should be complimented on how we handled it. At the fairgrounds, when Angela came to town after the victory, there were 10,000 people who came to the fairgrounds on her behalf. At that time, the black police officers who were called the Guardians and Tom Moss, I don't know if any of you remember Tom. Tom was the one, they were our security out there at the fairgrounds. And we had to have a bulletproof shield up in front of the microphone where Angela was speaking because there were still racists who were making threats about her safety, and her security. But Detroit turned out, and that's one of the reasons why this program is called Detroit Welcomes Angela Davis. What we did is we have put into the program itself a little bit about Angela's background, activism. You know the universities that she's taught at and the schools, and she's traveled all over the world. You know that she also speaks several languages, French and German, and I think Spanish. Is that true? A little bit, she says. But she's been to Cuba many, many times. She has never forgotten the theme that unless we're united as a community of people, black, white, brown, yellow, we can never really accomplish anything. But once we do unite in that way, we can do anything. And she has in addition to speaking all over the world and teaching at all of the universities, she's one of the organizers and founding members of Critical Resistance, which is dedicated to dismantling the prison industry in the United States. She has worked with She has worked in Australia, Queensland, Australia, with the Sisters Inside, based on her experiences and her 18 months in prison jails, both in New York and in California, and her trial, which was removed to San Jose, California. This is a woman who has had so many experiences and done it on behalf of the people in her community, not for herself, but for other people. And we can't afford to let the information about her pass over young people. They've got, see, she's one of my heroes. Now, I'm a few years older than Angela, but you never know it, right? But she has been a hero of mine ever since I found out about her and I met her. And I think that there's so many young people now that need to know her story so they can put themselves in the same kind of situation. And it is my privilege and joy right now, ladies and gentlemen, to bring on Angela Davis.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really great to be in Detroit again. And this is the Detroit of Coleman Young. And the Detroit of John Conyers. And of Reverend Anthony, and Claudia Morcom, and Joanne Watson, and the Communist Party, and the Democratic Socialists. First of all, let me thank everyone who was involved in organizing this amazing gathering on the eve of the elections. As you've heard, this is the 40th anniversary year of my acquittal. And I cannot believe it has been 40 years. I remember very vividly that meeting at the fairgrounds and the bulletproof shield, which I desperately tried to get them to take down. But anyway, let me take this opportunity to thank everyone here this evening and everyone in the city of Detroit who joined the campaign for my freedom. Thank you. Although I have lived almost continuously in California since that time, I have come to Detroit many times for the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, which continued the work of the campaign, attempting to secure the freedom of other political prisoners, challenging racist repression. And I've come under the auspices of the Communist Party. I remember very vividly the rally that took place in the 80s. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it was a rally against the plant shutdowns as global capitalism was leading to the deindustrialization of this city. And I can remember that the slogan was, "Save Dodge, Maine." Does anybody remember that campaign?
I don't know whether at that time we would have predicted that capitalism would have so thoroughly penetrated the lives of people all over this planet. When we challenged union-busting practices then, I don't know whether we could have imagined the extent to which the labor movement would sustain such damaging blows over the coming years. We certainly could not have predicted that the prison industrial complex would become such a profit-generating sector of the global economy, and that here in the United States, 25% of the world's incarcerated population would reflect 5% of the world's population at large. The U.S. has become what we now call a prison nation. And this prison nation is fueled by racism, by structural racism. But I don't want to begin by conveying the impression that everything that has happened over the last 30 or 40 years is negative. Because at that time, I don't think any of us could have foreseen the election of a black president in 2008. And of course, this rally takes place on the eve of the elections, in which there is another unprecedented electoral phenomenon. This black president is running for re-election. That is the first time in history that we've experienced such a thing. And we not only want to contribute to the efforts that will guarantee that the other candidate is not elected, but we want to reflect on the issues which we may have to take into our own hands even after we have elected the best candidate. It seems as if we lose the sense of newness and uniqueness so quickly. What once seemed utterly impossible is now old hat. How could that happen so quickly? How could we become so jaded? I don't ever want to forget the collective euphoria that occurred when we all learned that Barack Obama had been elected President of the United States of America. I don't want to forget how, for a moment, the city where I live, Oakland, California, was absolutely transformed. People were dancing and singing in the streets. People would stop their cars in the middle of the street to get out and hug someone on the sidewalk. It was absolutely amazing. I don't want to forget that during the inauguration, there was not a single crime committed in the entire city of Washington, D.C. That is a promise we have to hold on to. We cannot forget that. One of the advantages of having an African American president, lest we forget, one who is running for re-election, is that it is now possible to call on the United Nations to monitor the polls. I remember when we used to to jokingly say that we were going to ask the UN to monitor the elections, and we weren't serious about it. We were simply joking. But it is the case that United Nations affiliated election monitors from Europe and from Central Asia will be at polling places around the country and they will be looking for voter suppression activities by conservative groups. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which is a United Nations partner on democratization and human rights projects, will deploy 44 observers. And an additional 80 to 90 members of parliament from over 30 countries will be here to monitor elections. This is what used to only happen in Africa, remember? The 2008 elections produced a world historical result. And as we prepare to go to the polls a few days from now, let us not forget how initially no one believed that it was possible to elect Barack Obama. As a matter of fact, the majority of black people were going with Hillary because they did not believe it was possible to elect a black person at this time. And then people said, oh, he's so young and he's so inexperienced, and his background is community organizing. And he was involved in the peace movement. But I think more importantly, for those of us who were excited about that election, what excited us most was that as a black person, it wasn't so much that he was black, or it wasn't only that he was black. It was that he deeply identified with the black struggle for freedom. It was a political identity with what Cedric Robinson and others have called the black radical tradition. That is to say, the tradition of sustained, unrelenting struggle for freedom, not only in the US, but all over the world. And for me, this was the real meaning of his blackness. It was about a collective, radical struggle for freedom, from Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman to W.E.B. Du Bois and Ida B. Wells, to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Amilcar Cabral and Patrice Lumumba. And no one believed it was possible to elect him. But then there were those who refused to believe that it was impossible. And there were young people who were social media savvy, right? Who knew how to reach vast numbers of people instantaneously. And these young people had hope, and they refused to believe that anything was impossible. It was not even impossible to elect an African-American president of the United States of America. Now, the campaign that Obama ran was developed around categories that could appeal to any and everyone. And in a sense, they were large, capacious categories and concepts like hope. Everybody wants hope, right? Change. Everybody wants change. The future. And many people who were brought out by that campaign had never before been moved to get involved in electoral politics. But also, many people forgot the limits of electoral politics. They forgot that we were electing a president of the United States. The imperialist, militarist, racist, anti-union United States of America. But still, what was achieved was earth-shaking, and we should not forget that. What would the last 4 years have been like had John McCain been elected? I know many of us are disappointed, and it's okay to be disappointed, but let's put that disappointment into context. The economy crashed. Many people expected Obama to be the 21st century FDR, right? With new economic and social programs that would pull us out of the recession or depression. It really has been a depression. However, those who were simply waiting for Obama to emerge as the new FDR had a very warped view of history. Was it really only FDR who gave us, on his own individual initiative, on his own accord, unemployment insurance, a Social Security? Was it? It was not. It was masses of people in the streets. And in many cases led by communists. In the 1930s, there were marches all over the country. There were hunger marches. There were unemployed councils that prevented evictions. If we believe that it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who was responsible for unemployment insurance and Social Security, then we are absolutely wrong. And I say this to ask you to imagine what it might have been like had we taken to the streets the day after the inauguration, both to celebrate Obama's election and to pressure him to move on the issues we were all concerned about. Obama had said that he was going to shut down Guantanamo. Guantanamo is still functioning. We should have been out in the streets calling for the immediate closure of Guantanamo. The point that I'm making is that we can never expect to elect a president who will lead us to the promised land. As a matter of fact, not even a powerful mass leader can do that. We have to do it for ourselves. We have to do it for ourselves. And even Obama said during his last campaign, using the words of the wonderful black feminist poet June Jordan, he said, "We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are the ones we have been waiting for."